This is the most legendary M5 ever made. It is the E60 M5. It's the first sedan ever fitted with a V10 engine, hence the most legendary M5 ever made. Might even be the most legendary sedan ever made. How can you say it's the most legendary M5? You should be saying it's the most unreliable M5 ever made. Well, I mean, the way the automotive industry is looking nowadays, an M5 with a V10 is of course the most legendary M5 ever made. I mean, you have to agree with that. So this is the S85. It's a 5-liter V10 producing 507 horsepower and 383 pound-feet of torque, specifically made for this car. It's not a detuned or tuned version of an engine that BMW had already made. They only made it for the E60 M5. Now what we should add is that it was made for the E61, the E63, and E64 as well. The E61 was a wagon version of this car, unfortunately only made for the European market. 1,025 of them were made. The E63 is the M6 Coupe, the E64 is the M6 Convertible. Now, they don't make cars like this anymore. This is a dying breed. Now, Audi made an S6 with a V10 as well, but that was after this one. BMW set the benchmark for powerful sedans back in those years. Now, the E60 M5 is definitely not the fastest, quickest M5 ever made. It's not as quick as the F10, it's not as quick as the current F90. But the E60 has a purity and a soul that no other M5 ever made can come close to. When you drive this car, it's such a special experience that is hard to put into words. I'm going to do my best once we get out on the road here. Now, what makes this E60 M5 a little more special is that it's actually mated to a 6-speed manual, and the manual transmission was only made for the US market, not the European market, and we only got 1,300 of them. However, the S85 wasn't made for a 6-speed manual. It was made for the default 7-speed SMG transmission. When it was released for the 2006 model year, after a lot of whining from American customers, they agreed to put a 6-speed manual in the E60 M5. But we'll talk more about that once we're out on the road driving the car. Now, some say that the E60 is also the ugliest M5 ever made. Now, I beg to differ, and you might think that I'm biased as this is my own car, but I love the lines of the E60. I think it's absolutely beautiful, especially from the rear. Got very nice, sleek taillights that wrap around the body. We got quad tip dual exhaust. And we also have an aggressive front end of the car. I recently replaced the chrome kidney grills for black ones, which, in my opinion, enhances the look even more. Now, back in 2007, which is the model year for this car, by the way, we got 19-inch wheels wrapped in 285 35 diameter tires, which is actually not bad for 2007. Also specific to the M5 here are these cool fender air vents that you get on each side, of course. Now, while I did mention that the M5 has purity, it's not a pure beast. Yes, it's a naturally aspirated V10, but in stock format, it doesn't really sound like a V10, because the M5, to me, it seems like at least that they made it with, you know, the CEO in mind, who wants to have a quick car to the golf course, that kind of thing. And because of that, it doesn't really have that V10 scream that you might imagine. But yeah, I mean, that's what aftermarket exhausts are for, and I do in fact have an exhaust for this car on its way. Now, we got a huge trunk in the E60 M5. You can definitely fit a 6'2", 215-pound, semi-bald Swedish man. But like I said, this car was made for the CEO racer. If you don't believe me, just look at this. We have an illustration of how you can get 4 golf bags in here. Now, I did in fact take the car to the golf course about a week ago, and I easily fit my 1 golf bag. Now, 4, I don't really know about all that, especially if they're touring bags. That might be a tight fit, but at least we know you can fit a Bolt Swede in here. So with it being this super sedan, We actually have okay room back here. It's very comfortable back here as well. This seat is all the way back. Now, as it is an 07, we don't have a USB port. We do, however, have an auxiliary port. We got heated seats back here, and you can mess around with your climate and stuff like that. Now, this is kind of cool. You fold this middle part down here, and you pop this button right there, and we actually have cup holders in the headrest for whoever sits back here, which is usually Sydney. I sure as hell don't sit back there. The only place I spend time in this car, except for in the trunk every now and then, is the driver's seat. So we'll talk a little bit about the interior, and then we'll get out on the road, I promise. The leather has held up extremely well over 12 years. This is good quality in the interior. We have leather in the doors, armrest here as well. Very simple, you know, window controls and stuff here. Now, my 07 doesn't have keyless entry, so this is the fob right here. We got unlock, lock, and then the trunk popper. I have to stick it in this little slot right here, and then push the button to start. Now, as we start the car up, very classic and typical BMW instrument cluster that they have now foregone for a more digital instrument cluster, but I love this classic BMW look. Now, over 12 years, we can see a little wear right here, down here as well, but other than that, it's in very, very good condition. So we got heated seats, cooled seats. This is the active seats right here. We'll also talk a bit more about that while we're driving. We have the MDM button here, and like I said, no USB port, so I'm using my pink little 12-volt phone charger here. Now, I'm not going to waste time talking about this boring iDrive system because it's just very, very complicated. I mean, you learn after a while, but with it being an 07, we don't have a backup camera on this fairly large screen. It does have backup sensors though. However, we have Alcantara all through the headliner here, and the A pillar, the B pillar as well, the sunroof visor, which, by the way, I've noticed with all E60s that I've driven, whether they're an M5 or not, if this shade isn't closed and you have it open, it sounds like when you're driving and the sunroof is not open, it's actually closed, it sounds like it's cracked. You get this whooshing wind sound. So there's some kind of weird defect they did in the design of the sunroof, so I always keep this closed. Now, from the inside of the car, you don't really hear any exhaust note. It's only, you know, engine sound and induction noise while you're driving. You guys will see that here pretty soon, which is, again, a bit of a letdown for, you know, a V10 car. But yeah, an exhaust changes all that, of course. But enough babbling about the interior. We're going to take it out on the road here, and the first thing you do in an M car is hit the M button. And what it does in an E60 M5 is that it goes from the default driving mode, if you will, with 400 horsepower, and it goes up to 507 horsepower. So you actually get 107 horsepower boost by clicking this button right here. Now, we have traction control off, as you guys can see by that little symbol right there, which I, by the way, recently just had installed on the car because early 07s didn't have a possibility of turning traction control off. So you can see DSC off, which is the only way you really should be driving this car, I've noticed, because it has very, very good grip. However, you can, if you really push it, get it sideways. So we're gonna start with some good old POV action while driving the M5 here. Now, I do have my V-Box with me as well, so we're gonna do a quick little 0 to 60 test here a little later. Now, as it has the 6-speed manual, it is slightly slower than the SMG. But it's just such an amazing feeling to go through the gears and just rev to 8,000 RPM in this car. It's amazing. Now, one thing I would like to figure out though is the top speed of my specific car here, since it has the manual and it's missing an extra gear. The SMG, like we said, is a 7-speed. The manual is a 6-speed, so the gearing is different in the manual versus the SMG. BMW didn't go and you know, make a specific manual transmission like the Getrag that was in the E39 and put it in this M5 here. They actually sourced it from the 550. Now, I don't really notice any disadvantages in this transmission at all. I just love that it is a manual. I haven't owned a manual car since 2004, so that's what I wanted when I bought this car, and I also think that it's going to help to keep the value. The SMGs, as many of you probably know, does not have the best reputation for, you know, shift speeds and also reliability. You got someone want to race here. Dude, in a Lexus. A bit too many people here, bud. Oh, that thing sounds pretty good, I gotta say. Wow. So the E60 M5 is supposed to be able to do 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds. Now that is with the SMG. So it's gonna be very interesting to see what we can do in a manual. If we can get under 5 seconds, I see that as a success. So my V-Box here is showing me 5.8. That is probably because I got a sucky launch, and we do in fact have a manual. I'm probably not the best driver in the world. Now, one thing to keep in mind is with the manual E60 M5, you don't get launch control as you do in the SMG. So if you manage to get a good time in a manual, it's definitely a driver mode, which apparently doesn't apply to me. But we're gonna try it one more time. This was slight uphill also, so I think it's a bit more level here. So I put traction control in M dynamic mode, so we'll try it that way. 5.4. I know it's hard to see that little screen there, but you can definitely get at least a 5-second flat 0 to 60 time in the manual version of the M5 here. I just don't know if I'm gonna be able to do it. It's just so much fun to drive this car. Again, it's not the fastest M5 ever made. It's fast, but you know, in today's day and age and what we compare with and what's out there and you know the performance in cars, it's not that fast, but it just feels so special. And I love these active seats. It's actually active bolsters. So what they do when you have it in M mode and you hit a turn, so right now I'm turning left, the right bolster is tightening up to keep me in my seat. I mean, me at least, I've never had a car that does that. I think it's just so cool. Now while the car weighs right over 4,000 pounds, I just weighed it the other, I think it was 4,080 or something like that. It doesn't really feel like a super heavy saloon car. As soon as you get over 5,000 RPM, man, and this thing just, you feel all the torque come on. There's pretty much no torque before 4,000 RPM. You're probably wondering when I'm going to talk about the bad reputation that this generation M5 has. I mean, just check out these cup holders. How cool is that? You know, there's several videos out there on the internet from, you know, sizable YouTube channels and car review people talking about the E60 M5 and the problems that it's actually had. And I mean, myself included, I knew the reputation of this car before I bought it, but the reason why I picked this one is that it is a one-owner car, and that's pretty much unheard of with E60 M5s. I mean, all the other ones that I saw online had like 4 owners, 8 owners. I think there was another one with 1 owner, but it only had 30,000 miles on it, and it was even more. It was almost 50 grand, and that was more money than I wanted to spend. But the main concern that's talked about on the internet is definitely rod bearings and then the Vanos pump. But having talked to several other M5 owners, it all comes down to what the previous owners have done when it comes to, you know, regular maintenance and service and so on. And it's important with a car like this that you let the engine warm up before you start, you know, beating on it and revving the piss out of it and that kind of thing. That's usually what has happened with the cars that, you know, have engines that have blown up. Now, I'm the second owner. The original owner put, you know, 61,000 and some change miles on it. I have no idea what that person did, how well they followed a maintenance plan. I mean, that's impossible to know. So it's definitely a bit of a gamble to buy an E60 M5, but I'm willing to take that risk because I'm just in love with the E60 platform, and with it being an M5 with a V10. I mean, you can't get better. Like I said in the beginning of the video, they don't make cars like this anymore. It's a freaking sedan with a V10. I mean, this is the type of car that people are gonna sit back and talk about and reminisce about, you know, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, because they will never ever make another sedan with a V10. I mean, in just a few years, I don't think they're even gonna make cars, period, that has V10s, because everyone's downsizing. It's twin turbocharging, and I wouldn't be surprised that if in 10 years we talk about, you know, twin turbocharged V8s, like, oh my God, where did they go? Everything's gonna, you know, downsize even more forced induction, and eventually, you know, everything's gonna be electric. And I hate that. I mean, I think it's cool that it's around, but I don't want to see the whole automotive industry go to electric powertrains. Forget that. Now, you might say that one reason they do downsize engines is because of fuel economy, and this car gets horrific fuel economy. I'm currently averaging around 12.3. Now, on the highway though, it gets around 18.5 doing, you know, 80 miles an hour, which isn't all that bad. It's actually better than my Ferrari. It's also better than my supercharged F-150. The Raptor can reach those numbers. It's still kind of funny that my V10 car is one of my best cars when it comes to fuel economy, at least on the highway. As soon as you get and you know, you do city driving and stuff like that, yeah, you got to have deep pockets, or at least prioritize a big part of your budget for stopping at the gas station. So with me buying this car, it's my first M car ever. It's actually my first BMW ever, and we all know that BMW is the ultimate driving machine. Now, while it handles well, the steering feels good, this car is made to go in a straight line very, very fast. The top speed, at least with an SMG transmission, is, I might be slightly off on this, but 203 miles per hour, and that's extremely fast for a sedan. Listen. And then you shift to fourth. God, it feels so good. Now, I also bought this car because it is somewhat attainable. Price range wise, even though they're pretty rare in a manual, there's tons of them out there in the SMG. But then talk about taking a risk when you're buying a car like this. But either way, I understand that a Ferrari F12 is not very relatable on the channel, although people, you know, they love it, they think it's cool and stuff. Most people will think, you know, that's a car I'll never ever be able to buy. An E60 M5, you can get them for around $15,000. They might need some work. They might be kind of unreliable. It's a bit more money if you find one like this that's in mint condition in a manual transmission. But between $15,000 and $30,000, you can get your hands on a car that, I mean, it's legendary. Again, it was the first car in the world ever fitted with a V10. So, I mean, we're working with something special here, and it's something that a lot of people could afford. Now, I know two people that are original owners of 2007 BMW M5s. The one is actually an M6, and you guys might know him. It's Dr. M3. He's the original owner of his E63 M6 that has 19,000 miles on the clock. The other guy is my friend Ron. He has an E60 M5 identical to mine. Same exterior color, the wheels, and I'm pretty sure the interior as well. The only difference is the transmission. He has the SMG, but they're original owners from 2007. They've had the cars for 12, 13 years. I think that says something. You know, someone that gets their hands on a car like this this, they will understand how special it is, especially if you're a purist and you love naturally aspirated engines, high revving, the sound, if you put an exhaust on it. I hope I have many years in my E60 M5. So with me finally making it to my exit here after sitting in traffic forever, I think it's the perfect time to end today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what your opinion of the E60 M5 is down in the comments. I'm sure a lot of you guys are gonna point out, you know, the reputation of the E60 M5 and its unreliability, but I'm willing to take a chance here, a bit of a risk, I guess, so I can be able to experience one of the most amazing, you know, epic, legendary sedans ever made for an automotive enthusiast. The BMW M5, E60 M5 that is. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.